everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on the penultimate episode of 86. Episode 22. I almost said 22, but too many numbers. So, last episode was really good. I thought it was really well handled. I really liked that we got more with Kiri, but in traditional 86 fashion, as soon as you get comfortable with some form of character development, the character is gone. So, in that regard, it's like, oh no, but I honestly, part of me is like, oh, well, our five are safe, but I don't know. Like I said last episode, the fact that Anju mouths some words, I'm like, does that mean they're going to die? And Anju's going to be one that we lose this season? Or what does that mean? I don't know. I do have a couple comments I want to talk about real quick before we start. Me commented that Anju, speaking of which, saying they want to see the ice in the north calls back to what Daya had wanted to do and their dream. So I thought that was a nice little tie-in. And then I'm glad y'all didn't say anything until now, because otherwise it'd have been like, oh, but apparently I've been wrong this whole time. In the OP, it's not Karina that's crying. It's supposedly Frederica. So I'm going to have to look at that in the OP now and be like, have I been wrong this whole time? But I don't know, because there's been some people comment things that I'm like, no, that's not right. And here's proof. And they're like, oh, I'm wrong. And I'm like, oh. So I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the OP, but that's really interesting. If it's Frederica, that makes all the sense. And if she's crying because Kiri's dead now, that makes all the sense as well. And it would be a nice tie-in from Frederica to Kiri to Sheen. That would all make sense. So I'm sure that they're right, but I want to double check that when we watch the OP here in a little bit. And then there were some other comments that were talking about just references to things. There was a couple comments talking about the sign, but I will rest my case on that sign. That sign motif it was just a dumb piece of writing, and I don't like it. And I don't think anybody's going to convince me otherwise, because so far every piece of logic, I'm like, no. That they try to put it, I'm like, no. This is literally, I think 86 is the one fandom where the tiniest bit of criticism, people are like, oh, like up in arms. I talked about this in the Discord. I talked about this with the moderators as well. I feel like you can love a series, like love it, and still find faults with it and holes in the writing and everything, and it's okay. But it's fine to note those. Like, for example, I love Bleach. And I love Attack on Titan. Are they perfect series? No. They have flaws, and there are nitpicks, and I did a 6-hour recap of Attack on Titan where I talked all about those flaws. And I think that's fine. You can love something. Loving something and critiquing it doesn't mean that you hate it. It just means that you're like, yeah, this thing isn't perfect. Here's my thoughts on it. And I think to that extent, I will say this, I said it a little bit last week, I'm not a military person, so if you've got all these military anime out there you want to recommend me, you might hold off on that, unless there is some amazing character development in those series. I'm probably not the person you want reacting to that, because I just don't know a lot about it. I'm pretty anti-war myself, if that hasn't been apparent from my discussions. I'm not really into war. I don't really find war. I like history, and I like studying like World War II, and I like studying about the Vikings and things like that when we were doing Vinland Saga. Like, I find that part interesting, but like military stuff and like the different types of tanks and equipment and stuff, I don't find it interesting. And so I'm like, I feel like anytime people go on rants like that and talk all about like the military equipment and stuff, I feel like I'm listening to my dad talk about cars. And I'm like, yes, this Mustang with a 480 engine in it that's got this carburetor that was like used in this certain style, and it was this. I'm like, that's cool that he finds it so fascinating, because he loves that, and that's awesome. It's just not my jam. So yeah, I'm just like, oh yeah. But to that effect, there were some comments talking about like that the whole people can't let this splitting up thing go. And I'm like, y'all just gonna have to drop it and just accept the fact that I don't agree. And it's okay. I don't have to agree. It's fine. But they were like, oh yeah, well, the splitting up style is referencing old tank warfare and a strategy on that. And I talked a little bit about in the episode a few episodes back about dividing and conquering, and sure, that makes sense. But my thing is, if you're gonna talk about old wartime strategies, then a modernistic setting with high-tech opponents is probably not writing wise the best idea. In that case, you need to have an old-fashioned story with old-fashioned equipment and gear where those types of scenarios are more plausible and also can thematically show what you're trying to show your audience a lot more effectively. So I think of like Lord of the Rings, for example. They had a lot of warfare strategic elements that called back to World War One, which J.R.R. Tolkien, even though they will deny it, was involved in. They're like, oh no, it's not influenced by that. I'm like, bullshit. So I think that, a story like that, it makes sense. Attack on Titan, I'll use the comparison. Their technology is not that advanced in that series, so it makes sense when they have some old time military strategies. You're like, yeah, this matches historically what was happening with the same criteria of the fantasy world you're living in. But when your fantasy is dealing with high functioning sci-fi, old tank military strategies, they just logically don't make sense. And I think that that was just a choice by the writer that could have maybe been workshopped a little bit before being put into practice. If you're going to do an old-time war strategy, then it needed to happen earlier on at the first part of the season when the equipment was a lot more rusty and not as functioning and it matched better. Then when they have this new high-tech equipment, it makes no sense. So y'all are just going to have to let it go, accept the fact Romania does not agree, and we'll all just have to move on. That's all we can do. I told Discord, I'm like, I don't like those reactors that are just like, everything's amazing. This is my favorite season ever. I love this show. And have no critiques. I'm like, so do you just love everything? People like that are like, I love everything. I'm like, so you don't dislike anything at all? That seems a bit disingenuous. And y'all, I'm never going to be disingenuous with you. If I don't like something, I'm going to tell you. And if I find fault with something, I'm going to tell you. And if I'm totally cool with something, I'm going to tell you too. So that's just how I roll. And if you don't like it, I don't know what to say. I'm not the reactor for you, apparently. Unless you want to just, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm doing this for fun, damn it. So yeah, I like those comments, but man, this fandom though, it can get really touchy if you try to critique its series. It's like, it comes out in defense. And I don't know if maybe the fact that it's not as well known, so it feels like it's like an underdog they have to support. I get that. I do. I get it. And also, C. Davis was talking in their comments about how a lot of veterans really like this show. Oh yeah. I feel like I want to do, when we end next episode, there is a character from a series, and Sheen, it's Violet Evergarden is who it is. Violet Evergarden and Sheen. I would love to compare those two characters, but my journey with Sheen in this anime is not over yet till next week, so I don't want to do it yet. But C. Davis was talking about like Violet Evergarden is another series that a lot of veterans have watched because it deals with being a war veteran. Oh yeah, I like sob my eyes out at Violet Evergarden. I cry so hard every time I watch it. It's like, and it's just one of those. But I'm not dissing anyone that loves this series at all, because I feel like we all find things in shows that really resonate with us, and it's fine. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like things resonate with me when they don't. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm going to keep it 100, and if something doesn't hit right, I'm going to let you know about it. But if it hits right with you, that's great. That's awesome. Kudos. I'm glad. But I would feel disingenuous if I wasn't honest, right? And I don't have a very good poker face when I don't like something and I'm reacting to it. I'm like, I'm not very good at hiding that. So, that's what we can do. But yeah. But with that being said, I'm going to hold off my thoughts about Sheen and Violet till the end. I do love that Mateo El Fidel in the Discord was saying that, because I talked last episode about Lena is not a manic pixie dream girl, but Mateo was like, no, they are a what is it, a para-raid, like a para-raid Discord girlfriend. Yeah, it was like a manic para-raid Discord girlfriend, and I was like, oh yeah, that works. I'm all for that. I can have that. She is definitely that. She's gonna show up this episode or next episode. It's gonna happen, right? If she doesn't, I will riot. I will be like, I have been waiting all half a season to see this girl again, and you showed me like 2 clips of her. Come on, series, don't hold me back, don't keep me hanging. So we'll see. But I've talked for nearly 10 minutes. It's been long enough. We're gonna start episode 22, the penultimate episode of 86, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. This episode gave me a migraine. I'm going to try to talk through it, but it makes me want to cry out of frustration because this episode was doing really good. I was like, oh, the visuals, the symbolism, all of that. It was doing so well. And I was like, okay, 86, you're getting me. You got me. She's right there. And then I was like, oh, I'll have nothing but great things to say about this episode. And then the show was like, well, you could have nice things. Or we can make some really stupid decisions. This episode is so frustrating for me. It is so frustrating because I want to love it so bad, but then it does stuff that's so dumb. And I'm like, why? Why are you doing this, show? And I know people are going to give me feedback. They're going to comment over why this is amazing, breathtaking, revolutionary decisions that have never been done before. And I'm like, maybe sometimes when things haven't been done before, there's a reason they're not done because they're not good ideas. And I'm like, ugh. So I guess we need to do the good and the bad and the ugly because this episode is so frustrating. I want to love it so bad, but there are some choices made that I'm like, this is so, make me want to roll my eyes and go, really, show? Really? The next episode is called Handler 1. I'm like, if they're gonna have her see him, why are you making us wait to do it? Why? So you can close out the season with it? Why does that matter? You've teased us all this time. It was like, this episode was a case of blue balls, is what this episode was. It was a horrific case of blue balls. And if you don't know what that is, look that up at your own discretion. But that's literally what this was. Because it was like, it had the potential to have this beautiful, amazing moment. And then it was just like, no, we're not going to do that. And for the sake of being different. And I'm like, I hate it. So let's talk about, I'm going to try to rein in my irritation at this episode and try to talk about, there was a lot of good. There was a lot of things that really worked that I liked a lot. And then there's some things that make me want to chuck this entire series off a cliff. So let's just go through and maybe I'll calm myself down by then. Maybe I'll calm myself down by then. Oh my God. How frustrating. How frustrating. It's like this series, I want to love it so bad, but it does things that make me go, show why we got to be this way. So we get past the OP. Let's go ahead and start with this and just walk it through. The red and blue motif throughout this entire episode was really well done. I liked the color combination of red and blue, how it was tied together. I thought that worked really smart. I liked it a lot. There was a lot of symbolic imagery that was used in this episode that was really good. And I was like, oh, loved that. So we need to talk about it and talk about the positive because I just, but yeah. I love the conversation about the dead being of the past. Like Sheen's conversation here that the living can't interact with them. It's such a crazy thing because there is one of the things that fascinated me about this series from the start was when we got the twist that the Legion were brains of the dead. I thought that was such a really cool, novel idea. I'm like, yeah, because obviously you think when a soldier dies on the battlefield, you don't interact with them anymore. This took a twist to it and added a zombie factor to it and being like, well, these are all people that you've known on the battlefield that were your comrades and now you're fighting against them. But it plays with survivor's guilt. It plays with the concepts of camaraderie, of love, of hatred, of, betrayal, loyalty. It deals with all sorts of different thematic things. And I love that about it. So his speech here about not being able to interact with the dead, it's such a very interesting conversation to be having with 86 and the premise of the show. But then there's even another layer added with it in the fact that Sheen and Frederica in some part interact with the dead on an even deeper level with hearing the voices. And here Sheen has an interaction with Kiri. And I don't know if that's because they're both Nosens, if that plays a part in it. Here's the thing. I know that there's going to be stuff in the novel. my frustration with that is, and I'm going to save that for when I read the novel, is I don't like the idea of when shows or when series, when they do the whole thing about, oh, well, if you read the novel, you'll get more out of it. Or if you do that, I understand when you adapt a manga to an anime, there's usually parts left out, and they're usually like supplemental things, like superfluous things, things that were just like, they add substance, but they're not needed for the plot. This anime adaptation seems like it cuts things that are needed for the plot to make more sense. And it's frustrating because then people will be like, oh, well, when you read the novel, you'll find this out. I'm like, what if people don't know that? What if they don't connect that? What if they don't go on to Discords on the channels and find that out? Then they're just left with what they think is a mediocre show, and they don't realize there's stuff that they're missing. So I always dislike that. I'm like, if an anime is going to adapt the source material and there's something there that is vital to the plot, then you need to adapt that. Don't just leave it for the off chance that somebody's going to figure it out later, because they might not. So that's my nitpick with novel. And it's not just this series. I know there's other series that I have qualms with. The people are like, well, if you read the little bonus novel, and I'm like, what if I don't have time to do that? That should not be a requirement to watch a TV show, that you also have to go read a novel to get it. Like, it should be like with Kuroko's Basketball, for example. That series has a lot of extra material, but you can watch the main show, still enjoy it, and get a full rounded picture from it without having to see all the little extra things. The extra things are like Easter eggs. They're bonuses. Here, it seems like the stuff I'm not seeing that's in the novel is kind of vital to the plot. And I'm like, it'd be nice if that was here. I don't know. But I do like the visual of seeing like Kiri's hand reach out and grab Sheen's, and there be a connection between them there, right? And that he's trapped there under him. And I like the visual of, as there's this like struggle for dominance and Kiri kind of rises up to face Sheen, like to show that he's kind of like in the end the victor, despite the fact that Sheen's the one that kills him. He's like, I kind of win in the end. He's like, you were planning on dying here, weren't you? But that's not going to happen. So why are you still alive? I like that kind of conversation because it's almost like Kiri being like, so you say you have a death wish, but you really don't want to die, but you don't know what you're living for either. So you're kind of stuck in this limbo, huh? He's like, I kind of know what I lived and died for, so I'm on a better high ground than you, har, har, har. And then Kiri dies. I like that. I like that it further plunges Sheen into like questioning his purpose, right? And why he's here. And he gets flung away, right? He gets flung away, and then and that leads him back to Sheen. And his whole confrontation with Ray. And I feel for Sheen. I give Sheen a hard time because I was thinking about this up until, my thing with Sheen's character, I think, is we've had him for 22 episodes, and it's not necessarily, his character doesn't really develop over the 22 episodes. It just, he vocalizes more things that we kind of knew from the start. And he vocalizes it more to not only other people, but himself as well. Like he's having this moment of self-actualization. Because it's kind of like, I don't want to say like, sometimes characters, they develop and they go like on a roller coaster and they have dips and turns and things like that. Sheen's kind of just been doing this the whole series. He's always stayed on the same level. His motivation back in episode 1 is kind of the same up until the point where he sees Lena again. And then in Manic Pixie Girl Dream Faction, he figures out his purpose in life. But it almost feels like over the course of the season, instead of it like doing levels and building, it's just like when you go to edit a video and there's the volume and you can raise the volume. It just feels like this. Like we've just raised the volume and his voice has been more and more heard, which I'm glad. I'm for that. But as far as development of his character, up until this episode, it was kind of just, and here we get some development, but we're going to talk about it. I have thoughts. But I do feel for Sheen, especially when he's thinking about how his brother, if it weren't for you, then all these people would be alive or whatever. And he wears that shadow. I like the imagery of the shadow as the scarf he wears around his neck. My only issue with that is like, we've kind of already been through this discussion. He figured out his brother did like him. So, and I understand that it's not something you instantly get over. That makes sense. I get that. So I'm fine with that. That's fine. I like the going back. And then him talking about like, if it weren't for you, and going back to all the storied legionnaires, and they all call him Reaper, whatever. He takes them. He's like, you don't need me to let you don't need to let me hold you back anymore. And Sheen's like, he's like, you can just forget about me. And Sheen's like, but I don't want to forget about you. And that's kind of the thing, is that Sheen is struggling with, he doesn't want to forget his brother. He doesn't want to forget the people that he was comrades with. But at the same time, there's this guilt that they all died and he's still alive. They're not going to get to have their dreams and aspirations. And him, who doesn't have any dreams or aspirations, is still the one that's living, right? I did really like in this, like, I liked the subversion they did of the callback to people that have been lost. I've watched series where, you know, you look back on your comrades who are lost and there's the old thing like, well, we're fighting for them. We're keeping their spirit alive. And it's like used as motivation. And I do like that this series kind of subverts that and shows kind of like the dark side of that. And they're like, yeah, you can do that. But, you know, is it, you know, you would think maybe it takes an emotional toil using your dead comrades as motivation. And this kind of plays with that idea. And it's done really well. I love the shadow version of him. It reminds me of Super Mario Brothers, like the shadow, like the shadow version of you that you have to face. I really liked that. And I like, he's like, you have nothing. And then poor Sheen that's having this nightmare moment. He's like, you have nothing to protect and no place to go home to. And at that point, I'm like, we, the audience, knows but you do have people to protect. You do have a place that you could call home. If you wanted to, people are opening their doors and offering it to you, but you're saying no. But you understand why he does that, right? And he's like, you have nothing to wish for, nothing to aim for. It's like his inner saboteur has taken on this physical presence as this shadow. And it's just like everybody's telling him thanks. And he's just like, he believes he has nothing to live for. And on the one hand, you could sit there and go, well, why is he like this? He clearly has things to live for. He has his friends. He has, you know, a potential home and stuff. But there's this idea that if they all die, they've carried around this idea since episode 1 that if they die, Sheen is going to carry them with him. And they're like, oh, you're going to take us with you. You're going to carry on our story. And Sheen is kind of having this moment of going, but why do I have to do that? What about me? Do I get any say after this? Do I get any dreams? Do I get any aspirations? And I like it. I like how it's presented. It's not anything different than what we've known from episode 1, but it's still done in a really cool way here. And I like that. I like the fact that they show us all of this. It's terrifying. And I feel so badly for Sheen. He's like, and then there's that line, you were only kept alive so you could kill the Morpho. Yeah, so I like the context of everything we give. He's like, if no place needs you anymore, then there's no reason for you to stay alive. And so, again, we've known this about Sheen since episode 1, that he doesn't think he has a place he belongs. He doesn't see any point of living after they've completed their mission. I like the added layer of being the one that has to carry the burden for everyone. That all is well done. I like that. I think it's well done. I think it's important. I think it's poignant. I could see why a lot of people would be affected by that with Sheen. I am hoping, and I said this in the Discord, I'm hoping when I get to the novel, we get some more internal thoughts with Sheen like we do in this episode. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. I would love that because I feel like the anime doesn't believe in internal monologues unless it's this episode, because we don't get a whole lot, especially with Sheen. But yeah, and then I love the symbolism of him sitting there scraping. He's like, I want you to remember me just once in a while when you're happy. And we go back to that monologue with Ray, and I love him just sitting there like scraping at the hull of the ship, of his own ship, like trying to cut himself out, and he can't do it. He's like, just once in a while. He's like, free, happy. He's like, don't tell me what to do. He's like, not when you left me all alone. And then, of course, it breaks off and cuts his eye. I like that Sheen is like, how do I know what happiness and freedom is if you're not around? I don't have you anymore, so how can you tell me to be happy and free? I love that. I love the symbolism of him chopping at his own juggernaut, and he can't do it. I loved that scene. That's so good. It's great. I think it's so well done. And I love the concept of, he's like, why does every single one of them leave me alone? The visuals of all of the tags and stuff falling, I think it's really well done. It's not anything new. We've had that same motif and that same speech about him, like, why am I always the one left alone? We've had that all throughout the season, But I like the way that it's visually done. I think it looks really, really good. And I loved the symbolism of all the pieces falling behind the bench. That's the bench that he sat at to read the whole time. I love that. And he's like, no one will die before me. He's like, you die before me and then tell me we're the ones who are supposed to fight to the end. And that's a really good line from Sheen to say, like, you guys say we're going to fight to the end, but then you leave me. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? That's all great. And then the whole thing with Eugene, where Eugene is standing there in front of the memorial, and then there's the shadow of Version him right above him. It's creepy. It's really well done. He's like, you were looking for a place to die. That's all. He's like, you took them with you on your stupid journey. And so Eugene is just like, you're the one that's had a death wish this whole time. And you've just drug everyone else with you, and they've died along the way, and now you're sad that they've died. And I'm like, it's so powerful. And seeing Sheen just be rattled by that, it's really good. It's good to see Sheen show a lot of emotion in this episode. I'm so glad he's showing a lot of emotion. They animate him really well in this episode. He looks great. And Eugene's like, oh, well, thank you. And he's the last one that he sees. And he's like, and then Frederica, you hear her voiceover. I think it's interesting that both Kiri and Sheen have voiceovers of Frederica. And she's like talking about, like, she sounds very cold and distant in her voiceovers for each of their memories. She's like, your heart is frozen cold. You've got just the piece of Ray's ship and your broken knife. That's why the warm feelings you shared with your comrades burn you. It's like freezer burn, right? And then they're like, oh, we'll take them from you for a while. So at this point, he's like, they're like, rely on us for once. At this point, he thinks that they're dead, right? And when his arm got like blown off there, I was like, oh, I thought that his arm legit got blown off, like from the shrapnel or from the explosion. I thought he was going to be missing an arm. No, he's fine. He's fine. Everything's fine. But then we see like, and I like that as this flashback, as this inner monologue that Sheen is having, this soliloquy is going on, the screen is getting smaller and smaller and more condensed in the black. I like that visually. Looks really good. And Raiden and them are like, we've left you alone, haven't we? And then he's going like he can't see them again. And that's when he wakes up to see like the screen's just cracked, but he's okay. I like all of that. The visuals, amazing. The expressions on Sheen's face in this entire episode, the emotion he shows, mwah, mwah, mwah. Visually amazing. Loved it. But then he's like, you know, he's kind of frustrated. And so we have the explosion. We have like the rotting shell, the fiery flaming shell of Kiri in the background. And then we have the Legion, you know, butterflies all still around him. My thing was, he looks over to see the werewolf and all of them. It all shows, it doesn't show they're inactive, but it shows that they're just like, he can't see anything. And he goes, and then there's like a gun that's, you know, embedded in the shrapnel of the ship, and we assume that that gun is Frederica's. And so then he goes to reach for Ray. I don't know really, I mean, my thoughts were with the whole thing of him reaching for Ray was that he keeps trying to go back to like, I just need to take Ray with me, or to like get some kind of comfort out of the spirit of his brother with him. But then when he sees Lena, he kind of lets it drop. I'm hoping he still takes the shrapnel of Ray with him. He doesn't just leave it behind, or at least he takes it to Memorial and leaves it there maybe. But I thought that was interesting. And it almost seemed like in this moment, he was taking time trying to reach for it, but then he's just screaming out in frustration of everything that's going on. The fact that he doesn't know the status of his comrades, the fact that they could all be dead, the fact that he doesn't know why he's still alive, but here he is. Like, all in that moment was really, really well done. And I liked it a lot. I thought it was very powerful and moving. And then he hears the Legion. And at first, it seemed like it was Kiri, right? And he says, you thought it was over, didn't you? You thought it'd be over when you killed the Morpho, right? And he's like, no more. Yeah, like Sheen. For a second, I thought that maybe it was like Raiden's voice. And I was gonna be like, oh shit, no, Raiden's Legion. And now Sheen's gonna be like, no, kill me. I don't want to deal with my friends becoming Legion at this point. But I was like, that'd be really fast. Too fast for Legion to work for that. But Kiri basically transferred his consciousness, right? He transferred his consciousness over into this bot, which is very weird because Lena's the one that ends up taking him out. Okay. And then he's like, but it's just me again. And he's like, will you remember me? But to tell the truth, you've been waiting for this. So, and then the part where he was like, I want you to remember me. It's like the idea that he's going to die alone and be with Legion. And in that moment, Sheen says, kill me. But it's just like, he doesn't want to become part of Legion. He legit just wants to die. So he's not going to like have to live on in this existence. And he's like, isn't this? And then of course, Kiri's like, well, isn't this what you wanted? You've been waiting for this. And it goes to get it. And he's just like, this moment. And then of course, that's when Lena and her boots show up. These boots were made for walking. And I'm assuming it's Cyclops that killed the Legion there. Cyclops knocked it out. Because otherwise, how could Lena have done it, right? We can talk about the logistics of Lena walking around on a middle of a battlefield with a Morpho when she has no cover or protection other than Cyclops. We can talk about that, but I'm fine. Whatever. At this point, I'm like, they've conditioned us this entire season to believe that, you know, maybe if you're outside of a juggernaut, you're going to be fine. So at this point, in episode 11, I will honestly say has kind of ruined the suspense of anyone dying in this series for me, because the moment they all lived through episode 11, I was like, anyone can live through anything at this point. Because I'm like, if you can be on the ground defenseless and a Legion army doesn't attack you, you're fine. You're fine. I really thought maybe Anju would do this, and I kind of like, not that I want to condone the killing of characters, but this series, like, it doesn't, I don't feel like any character is going to die, right? It doesn't have any stakes of, oh no, this character could die. The moment that they're like, we all made it out alive. And I'm like, well, they're never going to die. No matter what happens in the series, none of these characters are going to die. There's no stakes, right? I don't feel like there's any stakes for their survival being questioned, because if they could fight off parts of Legion army by themselves, if Raiden can withstand a direct blast from a Morpho that like took out half a city, if Anju with 2 broken legs can fight a whole bunch of Legion, I mean, that's the thing, right? That's the thing. And I should be happy that this show keeps these characters alive. I should be happy about it, but it's just like the show gets you so riled up emotionally, and it makes it be like, oh, we're gonna kill this character. No, actually, we're not gonna kill any of them. You're fine. And I'm like, make up your mind, show. You get tired of being tormented by this show teasing the deaths of characters, and then when you find out that all that anxiety you had was for nothing, you're just kind of like, well, then why am I anxious? Why am I worried? They're not gonna die. Last episode, I was kind of worried because I mean, Anju had those words that we won't. Are we gonna find out what she said? I don't know. Has the show forgotten that already? We only got 1 episode left. I don't know. Maybe the show's forgotten that, or maybe I have to go read the novel to find out. And that's like the worst, right? Or it's going to be something that they don't tell us till later seasons, I guess. Why keep it secret? I don't know. But yeah. So anyway, I'm going to get off on a tangent. So then we get back to Sheen being like, oh, I do love Sheen's face where he's like, who saved me? Like, he just face is so stupid. Where he's just like, who saved me? It was very cartoony, very anime. It was hilarious. And then, of course, now, show, at this point, the show had this opportunity to do this amazing thing. And I've been waiting all season for it to happen. Is that the symbolism, the fact that as she walks through, the Legion butterflies, like the death surrounding him leaves, the blue leaves, and suddenly the beautiful red spider lilies of the OP. I was like, oh, gorgeous. I was like, yes, he sees her coming. He doesn't know who she is. I was like, yes, awesome. He just thinks that she, and the thing of it is he can't hear her voice. So he just thinks she's a member of the Republic that's managed to make it there. He doesn't know her voice. I was like, oh, awesome. So I thought it could go a number of different ways. I was like, he can't hear her. She can't see him. The senses aren't aligning. It goes back to the para raid with sight and sound. I thought that was brilliant. There's literally a little piece of shrapnel boulder in between them visually. I was like, give me all these symbolism checklists. Do the scavenger hunt. Let's go. And I was like, okay, well, either you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to have them not know that it's each other, and then have whoever, like the Confederacy come in, the 86 come in, have them come in and get together. And then at the end of the episode, they're going to figure it out. Again, the show trying to have its cake and eat it too. I was like, if you're gonna tease us, you gotta tease us properly. And there's a way to do that narratively that would be effective. And if you, it's the concept that he doesn't know who she is, she doesn't know who he is. And they just do a lip tracker. Like that part was amazing. And he's being formal because he doesn't know it's Lena. And he's like, thanks for the support and all this. And then she's like, are you alone? Why are you on this awful mission alone? And then of course he's like, oh, she doesn't know the half of it. Ha ha ha. And he's like, well, thank you for your concern. She says, every place is something. And he's like, my main unit is behind me and I will be able to rendezvous with them. So he's like, oh, don't worry about me. I'm going to go back. It's fine. And she's like, oh, I see. And then it's like, will you come with me? And I love the shadow kind of overshadowing them. And our main unit is capable of protecting you if your numbers aren't too large. And she's just like, no. Because he's like, oh, I'll take you with me if you don't want to. And I was like, okay. I thought she's going to go with him. They're going to rendezvous up with the Confederacy. And if all 5 of the others are alive, whatever, they're going to rendezvous up with them and all be together. The other 4, whatnot. And then she's going to like start talking and they're going to be like, oh, it's you. And I was like, oh, that would have been hilarious. And see the look on their faces would have been so funny. But she's like, I can't abandon my comrades and subordinates and go with you. Even if I'm not strong enough to win, I'm going to stay here and fight. And it's that fighting spirit, you know, that Sheen's like, oh, well, I can relate. I'm kind of similar. But so apparently there's other 86, maybe not just Cyclops, but others that she's like, I can't abandon and go with you. I have to stay there. And he's like, well, what are you fighting for? I mean, for what? Are you in a hurry to die? And he thinks of himself because he kind of sees himself in her. And he's like, you would have done better to not fight at all. And she's like, oh, well, excuse me. And I like she walks towards him. And then she tells Cyclops to stay back. And that's when she turns the parade on. So she didn't have the parade on before, but the parade still activates with part of Sheen and still works, right? And she tells Cyclops, you know, it's fine. And Cyclops is like, if something happens, make a run for it, my queen. My queen, right? Of course. I like the idea of nobility, of Lena, of Sheen, whatever. And that's when Sheen figures out who it is. And I'm like, amazing. Great. This is awesome. It's so good. They both recognize who it is. And then they have the little song that starts playing, you know, at the end of the series, the song that's playing. And at this point, I'm like, okay, he's going to open the hatch up. They're going to see each other. They're going to look. And then the Confederacy is going to arrive and they're going to be like, hey, we got to go. We're going to catch up later, blah, 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 blah. But for them not to see each other, and for her not to know that it's Sheen, but he knows her, why? What's the point in delaying it? And if they're not going to see each other next episode, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be like, you've got to be joking. If they drag this bullshit out of him being like, I can't tell her it's me yet. I can't reveal that I'm here yet. How is she not going to find out that the 86 are there next episode? How is she not going to find out? How is she not going to find out? They've been separating and segregating the 86 in the Jihad Confederacy Army this entire time. And they're going to get back and be like, there are no 86, only Confederacy members. She's going to be like, okay. I swear if they do that, I will have a high-speed come apart. I'm like, no. Because she's like, I went through and saw everything. She's like, I'm a commander of the former Republic's Defense Forces. And then he realizes who she is. And it's like, yeah, and I love the reverse of instead of everything getting darker and closing in, it gets wider and like opens up. Like that reverse is really cool. And she's like, I'm not going to run for this war. And they have this great moment together. And then he's just like, you know, and he realizes who she is. And this is the girl that he's been like wanting to see this whole time. He just didn't realize it. And she's like, and he's like, those people died a long time ago, didn't they? What duty do you have to the dead? Now, I said a long time ago. I'm like, Sheen, that's only been a couple months. I guess maybe a year, but it's not been that long. And then, of course, it blows up and there's rainbow sparkles. I'm all about the rainbow sparkles. Like, all the fanfare, all the, like, imagery. I'm like, give it to me. I love it. I'll take it. Because it mimics the fireworks. Like, that part's really good. And she's like, I was asked not to forget them. And she's like, I told you I wouldn't. And then, of course, Sheen's like, what? Oh, she remembered the words that we said together? She's earnest? What? And then, of course, she's like, you know, she pulls out the picture of her as the handler that Theo drew and the picture of all of them. And I love that Sheen's like gets kind of emotional and he starts to cry. And she's like, you fought to the end and you survived. That's something you should be more proud of. Like that's everything he's been needing to hear. Raiden's been trying to tell him it, but just, Raiden, you don't have boobs, so he's not going to listen to you. Oh, sorry, Raiden. Your boobs aren't big enough for him to listen to you, and he doesn't like Karina because she's like a sister to him. So, but I really liked this moment. I liked that Sheen, my thing is, it's like, Sheen, why can't you open up the hatch and let her see you? Why can't you let her see you vulnerable? Like, why not? Like, I don't see what the problem with that is. I've watched other series where vulnerability of a character is, it's fine to show that. It almost feels, I don't want to say it feels machismo, but it does feel like, be like, I'm a man. I can't let her see me like this. I gotta get myself in shape so she can see me as a man. I'm like, she's gonna love you 20 times more if you're vulnerable to her and show that you are, because he's a piece of work. I'm like, Sheen, you are a piece of work, and she needs to see what she is getting into before. I mean, maybe you don't want her to see this vulnerable side of you because you're afraid she might leave you and go, that's a lot. But why can't they open up and let her see him like that? Like, what's wrong with that? Because, I mean, I like his expression and everything. It's fine. And it's supposed to be this big romantic moment. And when he says Major, I'm like, how does she not know? Are we going to make Lena dumb? Are we going to make her character dumb and not realize it's him because he called her Major? Are we going to do that? Show, I hope you don't do that. And yeah, they're about to see each other. And then suddenly he closes the hatch. And then the Confederacy shows up. And Cyborg's like, but the thing about it is Cyclops, not Cyborg, is that they show up and she talks with the general and stuff. Why didn't Richard tell her who it was? And why was it a big deal that, and then Cyclops, why doesn't she tell him it's Sheen? She's like, you've never seen it. Why is everybody holding out on telling these people who it is? Why didn't Cyclops just say, you know that Sheen knows him, right? And she'd turn around and be like, what? Why are we holding out? Why are we keeping this secret? Why is Richard saying nothing? Being like, oh, that's Sheen. He's our blah, blah, blah. He's one of the 86. Did you know they are the people you've been searching for that you thought were dead this whole time? Why are they not? Why are we withholding information? Why? Because he calls him Lieutenant. And then why? Yeah. And then it's like all this extra stuff. Like, there was this really beautiful romantic moment that was building up and I was getting really excited for it. And then all these bitches come in and I'm like, I don't want you here. Like, you save it for episode 23. Come in at episode 23. Let us have this moment. I've waited 12 damn episodes for this. And then you ruin it. And she's like, I was worried about you. If you finish your mission, you need to give me a report. Har, 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 har. I'm like, the others gave their reports already. He's like, what? My friends were alive? And then Raiden, who looks freaking hot, by the way, with the arm bandage and everything. Glad you're still kicking, Raiden, doing great. And they're like, why didn't you check in with us? I'm like, yeah, why didn't he check? And then they were like, oh, all you had to do is check in with us, Sheen. Why didn't he do that? He's a moron. He's an idiot. Why didn't he do, like, if I thought my friends might be dead, but I wasn't sure, I think the first thing I would have done would be to check in on him. But I guess, if we're going to give benefit of the doubt, I guess the little Legion butterflies that were still under his equipment were keeping him from being able to interact with outside. So that's why he couldn't do it. It wasn't just that he was an idiot not thinking. There were reasons. It's fine. But then why'd they bring it up, right? They're like, why didn't you check in with us? And he'd been like, well, there were butterflies. And then he's like, oh, I made her cry. Ha, ha, ha. And they're like, stop being so reckless. And I'm like, tell Lena this so she can avoid this moron. And they're like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And I want to be, and I feel so frustrated, right? Because I want to feel like, I feel like I was being heartless during the reaction because I wanted to be like, oh, this is a great moment where they're all like together and they all survived and he's, he's doing so great. But I was like, I just feel like it was so jumbled and it was just not, it wasn't executed well. I was like, damn, I hate to be that way. But I was just like, why are all you bitches here? They should have had the moment and then during the end credits come in and do all this shit. Why are you doing it out of order? Why are we making this more, this should not be an anxiety-ridden moment. And then, yeah, when Raiden is sitting there next to Fido, who's upside down, saying miraculously the whole unit's safe. So I guess Fido got in the way. But Fido was over by Frederica, so he couldn't have gotten in the way. How did Raiden survive a blast from a Morpho that took out half a city? I don't know. And then Theo and Anju and them are all, they look like they barely got scuffed. They look like they got some dirt on them, like little scuffs of dirt. They don't even got bandages on. They were perfectly fine. How? And then Ernst comes in and he's like, I'm just worried about my kids. And I'm like, Ernst, I ain't got time to listen to you. I want to see her. And then she's sitting there talking with the general and everything. So they're like, okay. So then they're like, what's going to happen to her? They're like, you've already made contact. And he's like, after the operation ends, the Confederacy will begin a rescue operation in the former San Magnolia territory. This part was interesting to me too, because up until this moment, they didn't give a shit about San Magnolia. They didn't care about them at all. They were like, we're not getting their help. We're not talking to them. No. They didn't want to have anything to do with them. So I was like, why are you suddenly doing a rescue operation? Why do you care? What's in it for you? But then he says they intercepted transmissions from within the Republic that the three nations made a decision jointly. If another Morpho is ever made, it would be a threat if they hid in the highly defended Republic territory. So he's like, oh, well, we're just helping them because we want to get control over that territory so we can monitor it so a Morpho can't just arrive. And I'm like, that makes sense. There we go. There we go. So it's a little bit more complicated than just, oh, we're helping them out of the kindness of our heart. He tries to frame it that way, but I was like, there's more to it than that, right? There's some political advantage to that as well. And then they're bringing the chopper in. And he's like, it would be unethical to know if there were survivors and we just left them to die. I was like, but you all were going to leave San Magnolia to die before. So are you trying to have your cake and eat it too show? Or I don't know how to feel about this president who's like, I have a heart of gold, but I'm also sketchy, but I have a heart of gold. And I'm like, I need you to decide what kind of character you are. Do you have a heart of gold? Are you sketchy? It's hard to be both and not feel like eh. So I don't know. I don't know. I like shows where it portrays it. If you're trying to portray this realistically, then I don't know. I'm not totally on board with it. And like to the Confederacy, they're comrades. And this is a rescue operation, the same like we did for you all. But it's not a home you want to go back to, right? I'm like, well, the San Magnolia is kind of a desolate wasteland. I don't think you'd want to go back there. I like that Cyclops is getting on to Lena for whatever she's doing. It's kind of funny. And Lena's just like, oh, it's fine. I just like Cyclops as the sassy best friend who's just exasperated. I wish we could hear what they were talking about. I wish they'd show it like overhead, but Sheen he can't hear what they're saying. And so then it's like, he's like, I'm going to remain with the army. I'm going to stay here. I don't have any desire to save the Republic, but there are people there who I don't want to die. Lena, basically. And then Ernst's like, oh, young love. Wah, wah, wah. And then he's like, well, what's going to happen to the forces I just met? And he's like, well, we're going to take them to, our helicopters will take them to Grand Moor and they'll protect them if they run into the Legion. So they're going back to Grand Moor. They're not even, so we're not even going to, are they not going to see each other? What? Are you shitting me? They're going to Grand Legion, what? To Grand Moor, and if they run to Legion, our escort will protect them. So our advanced teams will take over while you guys rest for a while. What? And then, of course, Frederica, they try to put in this, like, joke stuff with Frederica that she's going to get in trouble. And I could care less at this point about Frederica because I'm like, you mean to tell me I waited all this time for them to see each other and you're not going to even give me that? You're going to separate them again? And they're not going to get to see one another? What? Or talk to one another? And you're going to drag this bullshit out over how many novels? Show. Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm into slow burns, but you got to give me something. This wasn't enough. So, yeah. So he's like, oh, I'm not heading home even after we meet up with the main unit. I don't need a hostage anymore. He's like, and Frederica's like, oh yeah, you don't need me anymore. You got somebody else to live for. I'm chopped liver. She's like, I was eavesdropping with you. And then there is one thing. It's Kiri protecting her. I mean, it's fine. I'm okay with that. It's a little hokey, but they established it early on with Ray, with the arms that were made out of the liquid armor, like the Terminator arms. They established it with Ray, so it's not unheard of. It's not like a weird deus ex machina. It's fine. I'm okay. It's a little kind of like, how do I write Frederica to where she lives? Here we go. But it works. It fits. I'm okay with it. But yeah. And then the gun, he was like, oh, that's fine that you can't use it. And she's like, you're a softy Reaper. You're still carrying them with you. And it's like, you didn't want to give her your name. And it's like, she was your commander, right? This is the part that pissed me off, though. Because I'm like, she doesn't know it was him in the stupid thing. And he knows who she is. But he didn't want to give her his name. And then he's like, well, I never told you. And she's like, well, I kind of eavesdropped so I know what's going on. And she's like, there has to be a deep connection between you two. Like, she's shipping them. I don't know if I am at this point. And she's like, go on ahead, was it? And then she's like, oh, well, she caught up with you, right? She followed your steps and bravely made it this far. Yeah, she caught up with him. And then she's like, why didn't you want to give her a name? And I'm like, why wouldn't you give her your name? Why wouldn't you tell her it's you? To let her know who you are. Like, what? Why couldn't she see you? Like, what? And then he says this. He's like, oh, I can't yet. She said she was going to catch up with me. And I'm like, well, she's standing right freaking next to you. I don't know what more catching up. She nearly played. Are you wanting her to play tag? Do you want her to, like, come up and touch the damn whatever its name is and then be like, you're it? I don't know how much closer to catching up with you she can do other than standing 5 feet from you. I don't know what else you expect from that. And he's like, it wouldn't be right if she caught up with me in this state. And I'm like, that's what pisses me off. I'm like, why? So she can't see you vulnerable? She can't see you, like, as a human being? Like, what? Unless he's like, I'm an idiot and a moron, which he is. Unless he's like, I need to make myself a better person and a stronger person, and then she can see me. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You want to become a better person? Fine. That's great. But why does that have to do with telling her why can't she know your name? Like, what? What? And then this line that came after it, oh, my migraine is coming back. Whereas, like, when she goes forward, what she sees shouldn't be a battlefield like this. I'm like, but y'all are going to be on a battlefield. So is she not going to get to see you till this is all done? Till Legion is destroyed? Is she not going to get to see you till then? What? I'm with Frederica when she's like, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, I don't either. I waited 22 episodes for them to see each other. And then we find out it's not happening. She's like, you're such a boy. No, it's not a gendered thing. It's not that he's a boy. He's a moron is what it is. You should have phrased it differently. That's insulting to men. That's insulting to men to say, oh, boys, they just don't want to show their vulnerability and do these things. I'm like, no, that's nothing to do with a man's penis. It's just him. She's like, you're weirdly stubborn when it comes to these things. Yes, he is. Ugh. And did you notice you have your answer? Yeah. If she's going forward, there needs to be something for her to see down the path she follows. So I'm like, it's like, she's doing this for Sheen. Sheen should be doing this for her, I guess. She follows a path you create. I'm like, that part, I don't really quite like that language because it's suggesting that Lena can't carve her own path. She has to follow whatever Sheen does, and Sheen has to be the one in the lead. And I'm like, that's stupid. He should be following the path that she creates to get back to her. Why can't that be the case? Why can't he follow the path that she creates? Why can't that be the case since he's the one that isn't in the right state of mind to reveal himself to her? Why can't he follow the path? Why can't he do the catching up to her? She had to catch up to him. He wasn't ready to see her yet. So why can't she create the path moving forward and he follow to catch up to her when he's a stronger person and a better person? Why? And he's like, oh. He's like, and then I guess Frederica just said that to make him seem like he has a purpose in life. But, and then of course he's like, oh yes. I'm going to reach out to her. Well, see, him reaching out to her makes it feel like he is going to follow her. So I'm hoping that's the case, but the subtitles didn't make it seem like it was. Or is he going to create a path to lead her to find him? I don't know. Then we have the mess hall. Everybody's all happy to be alive. I'm happy Bernholt's alive. I'm happy all those guys are good. Good for them. And then they get all the Reagan Leafs back and they're okay. And then, yeah, everybody's fine. Everybody's alive. Raiden looks freaking hot. Look good for him with his arm all patched up. And they're like, oh. And then she's showing them the sound bites where her and Sheen have their private conversation. I do like that Winslow kind of like is like, hey, look what I have on file. Oh, your crushy confession right here. And everybody kind of gives him hell for it. And she's like, oh, here's my report for her. And then everybody's like, well, how'd she look? And Sheen's like, oh, and then he goes, I couldn't see well. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? What a Casanova. I mean, Raiden knows what she looks like. Briefly. And then everybody's like, oh, when did you say not to forget? And then they're like talking about her voice and everything. And Raiden's like, she fought and survived. Raiden looks so good there. Lena, Sheen is a lot of work. He might not be worth it. You might just go for Raiden. I would give up on Sheen by now and be like, dude, no. He's a lot. I ain't got time to mess with this bullshit. Give me Raiden. Raiden has a stable head on his shoulders. He seems legit. I don't have to fix him up or make him feel like he has a purpose in life. Raiden and I could get along swimmingly. And then I guess I'm glad Karina's glad. And she's happy about it. She's not jealous, so I guess that's really great. And they're like, oh, she'd be surprised if she knew we were alive. I wish we could have met her just once. They don't get to meet her! And now she's going to be back at the Grand Mur. Back at the Republic. What was the point of her walking all that way to be a deus ex machina? That's all she was. She was literally a deus ex machina to give Sheen a purpose for living. She showed up, did her job, and then she peaced out. What? And none of them get to see her or tell her that they're alive. She just keeps on her merry way like a little martyr. Oh, I'm so frustrated. Oh, my migraine is back. I'm definitely going to take something and get in a better mindset for the last episode. And I am definitely going to read volumes 1 through 3, I guess, of this novel. And see what we get. But, I'm like, I watched all this time to get to this point. And all you did was for her to give him a pep talk. And the worst part is it puts him in this weird place of control where he's seen her. He knows it's her, but he can't equivalate and give her his info. Ugh. Yeah. Okay. I have a feeling that you all are probably not going to enjoy this reaction discussion, and I'm sorry. I'm very frustrated with this episode because there's so much that was good about it. There was so much that was amazing about it. The visuals, the sound design. Oh my God, the sound design was so good. And there was stuff that I absolutely loved. But then I'm like, if you're someone that's loved Lena's character and has wanted something out of her for the last 12 freaking episodes, and the most we get is her uncle mansplaining her and her giving this emotionally drained man a pep talk, and he doesn't even tell her his name or let her know the people she's been looking after are still alive. And next episode, she doesn't even get to see them. She has to go off somewhere else, and we're going to frame it as that's the whole. I don't know. I don't know if it's a series I want to read. If it's just this, maybe will she, won't she? Will she ever see him again? I don't know. If I was her and I found out after the fact that he was there the whole time and he didn't tell her, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, you mean to tell me you were there and you couldn't just say your name or be like, hey, Lena, it's me. The moment you found out it was me? Excuse me? Because, yeah, all he had to do was say, oh, it's Sheen. And when the Confederacy comes, she's like, oh, can I have him open the hatch? I want to see him before I go. That's all that they had to do. I'm going to go heat this back up. I'm going to take some headache medicine. I'm going to walk away from this for a little bit. I loved this episode. 90% of it was so good. But the thing I've been waiting for the most out of this whole season was just a big case of the blue balls. Ah! Yep. I'm sorry if you don't approve of this discussion and reaction. I'm so sorry. I really do. And the worst part is, I know some of you probably loved this episode so much and probably loved it. And that's so amazing. And I'm so grateful for you. I'm sorry if I've ruined your good time. But I'm so frustrated by this because I had such high hopes. And then, like a legion bot scythe. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'll be back next week with the season finale of 86. Bye.